developer, product owner, scrum master, their roles, artifacts, rule and events. Also, applying this over Jira and Microsoft Azure DevOps tool with agile planning and portfolio management. We follow the growing use of Scrum, and Scrum is being used patterns, processes and insights that fit the Scrum framework as described in this course. This is based on Scrum Guide 2020, the recent one, the concept and references taken from scrum.org. I will request you to please go through entire course and then give the rating. Do not hurry for that. Do not take decision at early stage, as more deeper you go, I'm pretty sure you're going to love it. Thank you so much. Let's have this learning objective. Hi, welcome all. This is Swati Shalini, and let me start with my introduction first. I'm a professional Scrum Master. I am a computer science engineering graduate from VTU and ePGDM Master from Alliance University. Overall, 9+ years of experience. During my career, I worked with Siemens as a software developer. I was in healthcare domain and worked on Nexus framework. I started with management activities while working with multiple organizations, Wipro, Capgemini, Accenture, and I was a part of program and project management specialist and grown organically as a project lead as my current role in Scrum project management and Azure DevOps. My certification includes professional Scrum Master from scrum.org and professional Scrum product owner from scrum.org and also certified Scrum developer from Avanade. I've also completed some other certification, .NET MBOX from Siemens and Lean Six Sigma certification, Green Belt. Okay, so before we start with the course, let me give you an overview, a Scrum program and project management, what it. We work on a multiple tool, Abacus and a Smart SharePoint tool and Microsoft Roster management tool. There are multiple tools you can work around. I have worked and I have exposure on these where we are taking care for project control services, the RRD creation, the requirements in a Scrum, when we do the capacity planning, so how many capacity should be there and the cross-functional team. So based on that, the project management team is going to work on RRD creation, rule of based on the coming, if anybody is coming on a bench, based on that when to roll off and when to lock them, multiple locking, soft lock, hard lock, future soft lock, future hard lock, shared lock or loaning purpose. I'm not going in the detail because here we are concentrating on Scrum Master and Scrum Project Management. I'm giving you an overview, and when you have a set of people, cross-functional team, we work on SOW. The project manager is worked on a SOW. Invoicing will be done on a every monthly basis. In a quarterly basis, we prepare the QBR and present in front of client based on the each employee performance. And the MME tool is there where the CCI calculation, where we have a margin when you're deploying any resource to the client side. So you have a percentage of margin. Usually we keep a percentage for 35 to 40%, and the forecast review, which is going to benefit you to decide on a team. So project scope is what what you are doing, means what exactly you are focusing in program and project management. So the work that must be done in order to deliver a product which is specified by the client, the particular feature and the function. So overall, all project management, we what we concentrate. So we first make a project plan, the budgeting, set a milestone, prepare a project. The product owner will work on a backlog, another thing, planning with their team, and whether this quarterly or half yearly plan, how when we are targeting to do that, the timeline, roadmap, it it depends on the duration, what kind of project you are getting. Based on that, set a roadmap and you finish that, and you plan and track the capacity. Once you are done with that, so you need to identify, and if there are any impediments are there, risk management, you need to do mitigation plan, you need to take care, and everything like when you are moving with the project plan. And now let me explain a little bit on the project plan. So then you have to set an objective, that is sponsor approval, the acceptance criteria, the high level design and the timeline, the duration, the scope of the project, and high level resourcing and assumption, and overall project plan, that schedule, that activity and resources, work breakdown structure, that what we are going to work now. And definitely as a project manager, you need to take care of the stakeholder management, as I said, like risk management plan and the communication governance plan. So that's all you need to take care. And when you're taking care on a program team, multiple teams will be there, project charter will be there, and based on that, you will be having a separate approval, separate plan, and you need to look, there should not be any dependency, and the defects are not there, and they are moving smoothly, and the definition of the final outcome will be same. So that's all about the Scrum program and project management. Let's move the next slide. Okay, so Agile principle and manifesto. Before we go into that, let's understand. So Scrum, uh, uh, when Scrum came and when Agile came. So actually, Scrum existed before the Agile came in, and Agile was created back in 2001. And Scrum, the team, Ken Schorber and Jeff Sutherland has created, and that product development they did in 1986, and still it was came into finally 1995, and the presentation has been given on paper, and until today we know them, and we are using them, this Scrum framework. So when Scrum framework is there, and based on that, when 2001, when Agile came in, so there are different methodologies. So in Agile we have multiple framework we will discuss now. So what is Agile? What do you mean by Agile? How agile you are? So when you have that versatility to adapt any new thing, learn any new technology, and you are able to work on that. How agile you are. You have that adaptability to learn new things and apply them. That eagerness to learn new technologies and what you need in a project, and you are flexible enough to grab that as a quick learner, and you are applying in a team. This can come in in your interview question. So this is very important, and this is the reason they actually make agile. The layman, I mean the simple meaning of agile, agility is this. What manifesto, what rules are there? So there are four rules manifesto for agile: individual and interaction over processes and tools. So skillful and committed people working together towards a common goal. Working software over comprehensive document. The primary purpose is to build working product, not the tons of documents or a communication. Sorry, not the tons of documentation. So communication is the focus area. That is working software over comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. When dealing with customer, you want to collaborate and have a shared purpose, a shared goal. You want to build trust and have a working relationship. Responding to change over following a plan. Having a plan is important. plan is too long or too rigid, then it will be challenging to respond, right, to the changes, whatever happening in the market or a new technological development you're looking around. So be ready to adapt your plan as needed. This is very important to be agile and agility. What is Scrum? We discussed that Scrum and Agile. So Scrum is a framework. Always remember, this is very important for your certification or exam purpose. Scrum is a framework, not the methodology or anything else that explain what you should do, like step by step, right? Notice the word framework here. You will understand. Okay. So what do you mean by framework? Okay. So a framework provides a structure, it provides the rules, it governs, but not a complete solution. This is just a process. Okay, so let's take a small example. When you prepare, some sweet and you have that structure that and you put your sweet into that container, structured container, designer container, and when you bring out your sweet, it become on a same shape, right? So it is a structure that provide you a rule. It should be like this, but it is not the complete solution. So therefore the name framework it is called. It is a process. So in Scrum it is not the people management. We follow a process management. Okay. Okay, so now we will quickly look the principles of Agile. So see, in Agile principle, what do you think what comes in the Agile principle? We have the first thing, we have customer satisfaction and continuous delivery, fastest delivery and the feedback. We welcome the changing requirement, the agility in the development. We deliver the working software very frequently, and we complete a one component, we get the feedback, and based on that we improvise and we complement our DoD. We close it, we do the daily collaboration with the values and the pillar we will discuss, and between the business and the people and the developer what we have. So projects are built around to motivate individual. Our Scrum team is a self-independent team. It's not a people management team. It's a self-independent team, cross-functional team. They are creative. They are innovative, and they are very flexible. So face-to-face conversion is there. We communicate directly, we coordinate, we worked on a process training, working software, and we focus on a sustainable development. In Scrum or Agile, we never ask for the multiple tasking because team can divert their focus. So we work on a focus on a single task, and we complete at a time in a single project, and we complete on a time in a sustainable pace. Definitely if you work on a weekend or multitasking you are doing, you can definitely do in the starting and do better, but over a time might be some resources will get frustrated and they go off, and they have their work life balance will get impacted, and this will also impact the project. So Scrum and Agile always focus on a sustainable development, and it is always trustworthy and self-independent people are there. So continuous attention to technical excellence and design a self-organized team. So DOD, your definition of done, the final outcome, there will be the same outcome from the multiple team, and it will cover your functional and non-functional all the requirement, and your technical excellence, the quality, they will focus on that. That is the most important one of the point in the Scrum and Agile both way around. Okay, so what is Scrum? everything. So what is Scrum? So Scrum is a framework for dealing with complex work with iterative and incremental approach with an adaptive environment. Working with time boxes and quick adaptation. Scrum is a framework that imposes time box feedback loops and encourages small increments while overall trying to deal with the uncertainty. Okay, now the what is the summary of agile method and waterfall to agile? The waterfall method try to know in advance what will happen in future and build a complete plan what leave little space for changes or feedback loops. In waterfall method, the feedback happens very late in the process, often too late to make significant changes. Okay, now in agile the empiricism work with what is currently known and encourages observation. Scrum is founded on empiricism, on the empirical process control theory, and Scrum uses an incremental approach to optimize predictability and manage the risk. The Scrum or Agile define the role even and to get your outcome multiple artifacts rule to get the your outcome and the DOD in a fastest delivery. So agile or scrum can be used in a various way, not only the software development. So there are various way. The most important ideas regarding the scrum framework. So scrum is a framework for developing, as we discussed, complex product, right? So scrum addresses complex problem. What is your complex problem? There are a simple problem, there are complex problem, there are multiple. So what is complex problem? So where you have little things known in the starting and maximum thing is unknown. Okay, so when you get requirement from the client, you know the little and just a overview, and most maximum requirements are unknown, you will get slowly. So that is called complex problem. So Scrum addresses complex problem in an iterative way. What is iterative and incremental? Agile and Scrum is an iterative and incremental approach. So what is iterative and incremental? Iterative, a particular set of process like design, development, testing, maintenance, installation, installation. So this is a set of that process we follow in every sprint, that is called iterative. What is incremental? So you are incremental is continuous delivery and continuous integration. You are creating making a product in every sprint, and every sprint you are complement your product. Your DOD is getting complemented based on the requirement and based on the uh, uh, targeting the DOD and the quality. Okay, so Scrum addresses we understood like complex problem, iterative and incremental. Scrum is a lightweight, simple to understand but difficult to master. Why we say this? So Scrum is a process. Scrum is a framework. In a practical, when we work on a company, so there are multiple scenarios will be there, multiple Scrum challenges will be there. So we have to implement. We have to implement the process. But sometimes, based on the situation, you have to take a decision. It is as simple as that. You are driving a car and you need to take your own gear. You need to decide which gear, one, two, three, four, which gear you need to put, and you need to drive. So we need to, in the same way, based on the situation, you need to remove the impediments and make the process very smooth. Okay. The Scrum Framework consists of a Scrum team and their associate role, event, artifacts, and rule. It is used to very diverse area from developing software and hardware to managing the operation of our organization or almost everything we use in our daily lives in government and multiple areas, as an individual and societies. The essence of Scrum is a small team of the people. So what we follow in Scrum, the essence of Scrum is a small team of the people, and the usually count is maximum to nine. So in Scrum 2017, it was 9 to 10, and starting with the 3 to 9 to 10, and in Scrum 2020, so maximum 9. Scrum is founded on, now again, see, this is a process we actually follow them, but in a practical again. So it is based to when you have a larger, project or like that, or a larger software you're making. Sometimes it's also make them 50, not based on the situation. But here we are focusing also on the reference is Scrum guide, and we need to first understand all the rules in a as per the Scrum guide what has been given, and in a practical based on that you need to drive a car as per your gear, right? So you need to take a decision based on that will be done. So Scrum focus on a small team of people, and it is maximum of 9 people as per our Scrum 2020 guide. Okay, so Scrum is founded on empirical process control theory, empiricism. There are 3 pillars uh, uploaded every implementation of empirical process control, that is transparency, inspection, and adaptation. This is very important because some of the organization they do not follow, right, fully agile or Scrum. There are multiple challenges will become organization cultures, environment, eco challenges, multiple challenges will come up. So it is very important for a team or an organization to adapt this in a whole, not a partially. It should be adapted as a whole. The Scrum values are commitment, courage, focus, openness, and respect. The simple rule of Scrum, there will be a one product backlog, and one product owner. Okay, so we will just go through that. What we understood, what is a simple the 3 pillar of Scrum: transparency, inspection, adaptation. What are the values of Scrum? Commitment, focus, courage, respect, openness. What is the Scrum rule? One product backlog, one product owner. Now, the next is events. So, a sprint combines all aspects of the work required to build a product. The short iteration allow for a constant feedback and improvement. This considerably increase the probability of creating right product, a product that customer use and love it. And end of the sprint, a potentially shippable product is created, which is your definition of that. We will go into the detail these terms. Now the Scrum, we have just learned, okay, events will be there. Who all are the Scrum team? A Scrum team consists of Scrum Master, a product owner, and the developers. There is no discrimination in Scrum, who is developer, who is architect, who is tester, who is in operation. No. Everyone is same. That is called developers in Scrum Guide 2020 and Scrum 2017, the development team. So in short, Scrum team consists of a Scrum Master, a product owner, and the development team, that is your developers. It is whole team is addressed as developers. Who all are the people in Scrum? This is your Scrum team. Who all are the people entire your Scrum? So Scrum team that consists of these 3. Your stakeholder. Who all are the stakeholder? Stakeholder can be any, your CEO, board of member, client, or customer. Even you will get into practical exposure. Sometimes your client will be your product owner, and you'll be having a team and other people you will be working like that. So my project is like that. One of my project was like that. Okay, so the product owner will create a list of feature called the product backlog and organize. Okay, so let's understand in all way round the responsibilities. The product owner organize the list as per the requirement and to ensure he or she will ensure that customer get the maximum amount of value. So product owner is a person who will maximize the value of the product and product backlog. During sprint planning, the developer will select list of items from top of the product backlog, work on during the sprint, turn them into potentially reusable product increment, that is as per your DOT, and product increment is simply a new version of the same product. So every increment will complement your the previous version. The Scrum team has a fixed time frame. It is a time box. Scrum is a time box. So Scrum team has a fixed time frame to complete a work which cannot be longer than 1 month. So usually it will be 2 to 3 weeks, but it cannot exceed more than 1 month, 4 weeks. And the developer meet in daily Scrum to synchronize, identify the problem, impediments, and keep work moving forward. So along the way, the Scrum Master keep team focused on sprint goal and help remove any impediments that affect them. At the end of a sprint, the product increment should be potentially shippable, and a Scrum team together with the stakeholder conduct a review of the work completed and discuss what to do next. The last event of the sprint is a retrospective of the process. The Scrum team look back at how the sprint went and figured out a way to improve their development process, and then they start from beginning the next sprint planning and the cycle repeats. Okay, what all are the Scrum artifacts? What do you mean by artifacts? So objective, I want to create a website. What will be my artifact? My objective is to create a website, and what all requirement is required, the full requirement, right? The full data to create that website is my artifact. In that we have three kind of artifacts. So requirement is also divided into three parts. So what do you understand? Let's understand first vision and goal. Okay, so what do you mean by product vision and what do you mean by product goal? So when you decide to do something, that is your that layout is your product vision, and when you create the steps and when you reach out this small milestone, that is your product goal. So a person is decided to go on a on a moon, that is your product vision, and the rocket you will prepare and what kind of fuel and whatever is required to do that action is your product goal. So we have three kinds of artifacts in Scrum: product goal, sprint backlog, and increments. So product backlog is entire project. You want to create a website, entire project at a first step, what you get from the client, that is a product backlog. Product backlog is always keep changing. It will be get modified whenever it will be asked, and it is never finished. It is never completed. So your product backlog is the commitment of product backlog. As per your product goal, what step you are taking towards to fulfill your vision, you reach out your goal. So your goal, which is based on your vision to reach out that product goal, is your product backlog. So product backlog commitment of that artifact will be product goal. Now second is a sprint backlog. You have divided your work in Scrum. What we do in Agile and Scrum, what we do, we divide our work into different small chunks, right? So that is your in one sprint, whatever requirement you are fetched out, you will take to work on, that is your sprint backlog. And the commitment for that sprint is your sprint goal. So when you reach multiple sprint goal, you will reach to the product goal. When you uh, reach to your product goal, you will fulfill your vision. And what is your increment? Your objective. What is your objective to do this? To create a website, to reach out to the moon. So this is your objective, right? So, and each version, your DOD will complement the previous version. So your increment is your commitment for your increment, potentially shippable increment. What is that? Your definition of done. DOD is your definition of done. So increment commitment is definition of done. So we will go deeper into that. The definition of done will cover, means consist of functional and non-functional, both the requirement. These three are the artifacts, and artifact is something which is made by the team, the form of overall description of a product. Simple language. The Scrum Guide defines three artifacts which we just gone through: the product backlog, the sprint backlog, and the increment, and or we can also say product increment. So the product backlog exists to reach the product goal, which is a long-term objective. The sprint backlog exists to reach the sprint goal that the Scrum team defines for every sprint, and each sprint goal is a step towards achieving the product goal. The product increment is committed to fulfilling the definition of done, which usually describe the desired quality that product should have. Okay, let's go a little more. I would like to explain, and then we will move further. Okay, so let's start from here only. Give me, let me look into this if I can. So let's see Scrum project management. So in Scrum project management, entire Scrum thing, whatever we have gone through, it will come. Your Scrum event, your sprint, the 5 events, the time box, who attends, optional, who are the optional audience, the purpose of each event, the input of each event, the output of each event, and the Scrum team, your Scrum Master, Product Owner, Developer, their entire responsibilities and the artifacts. We just gone through the three artifacts. Product backlog, generally a backlog represents build up of unfinished work. So a product backlog contains undone things that are related to the product. You can see it as to-do list. Okay, to-do list. The backlog needs to be continuously improved and ordered, higher order, and priority will be detail listed, and remaining or a lower backlog will be less descriptive. I'm explaining it to give you the entire overview of Scrum project management, how it works, what all things are there. So we call this activity refinement. So when your project will start, so usually there is nothing sprint zero in your Scrum guide. Okay, so while setuping the project and everything, we do this refinement activity. In our normal practice in organization, few organization, they keep sprint zero, and when we start up with the refinement activity, we call this activity refinement zero by clarifying the details and adding description to the priority one item and answering the question, etc. And as per Scrum guide, we do everything. We start up with the sprint, and we can do this refinement activity anytime, whenever it is required. So we are adding things that need to be done on a next immediate node, or this product backlog. So in Scrum, the product backlog is an artifact designed to provide transparency and opportunities for inspection and adaptation. So the product backlog is an ordered list of everything that is needed in the product. The backlog can contain new feature or improvement to existing one fixes or any other changes that need to be done on the product. The item in the product backlog are referred to as a product backlog item. So in a product backlog, we can simply say PBIs. We say PBIs. The characteristic of backlog item depend on the product or the domain where the development work take place. Typically, an item will have attributes. Your PBIs have the attributes like description, order, size, and its value. Product backlog item often include acceptance criteria that will help test if the work performed is complete. And the sole person accountable for the product backlog is the product owner. We call the activity of making changes to product backlog management. So how exactly is the product backlog created and managed? How? Everything starts with a goal or a vision. Okay, so the product owner is expected to define an objective that product should achieve. This is a product goal. The product backlog contain need to be aligned with the product goal. So in other words, you can understand in this way that you should have your product backlog, all the items that help you to reach product goal, and the product goal is the commitment for the product backlog and is part of it. And this is a product goal. For the Scrum team, then they get into the refinement activity, and they work on each PBIs, the story point, and their estimation. Now, the story point and the estimation depends on the complexity of the requirement or the feature. So there is only one product at a time for a team. Managing the product backlog is an ongoing process. While the product owner is accountable for the product backlog, it is ongoing process and can order, add, remove product backlog item anytime whenever they want. It does make, and definitely product owner is the owner of this thing, and his decision will be respected by everyone. It does make sense to closely work with the developer during the product backlog refinement activity. The product owner and the developer collaborates on breaking down the larger item into the smaller one. So when the product owner get the requirement, the larger item will called as a epic in Jira. Okay, or in our Azure DevOps, anywhere. So the larger item is called as the epic. That larger item is divided into smaller pieces. That is your user story and the task. Only the term is different. So in your Agile board or a Scrum board or a Kanban board, everywhere, the entire process is almost the same. You just need to understand the process. Very few terms will be little different. That's all. Okay, so when you breaking down the larger item into the smaller one that are easier to describe and develop, and the smaller item, it is better. It will be, have your all the attributes, that is your adding details, size, order of the product backlog. The size of an item shows how big or how small the effort of the doing the work is, and the process of figuring out the size of the item. Okay, and this is called your sizing or estimation, how complex it is. So it is also called estimation, it is also called sizing. So the product owner will influence the developer doing the work are responsible for sizing, and they have the final say. This is also very important note here, and sometimes we get a question. So product owner will impact you, but the developer have the final say. The product owner and the developer collaborate to understand the item and often look for a way to reduce complexity by making a trade-off. And this activity is not a part of mandatory Scrum event, because we have only 5 events, and the Scrum team decide uh,
how and when the refinement is done, whenever it is needed. The product backlog is the emergent and never complete. It will never complete, or it will never final. It is constantly changing. The product backlog grows with the product itself and changes based on the business requirement, market condition, or other relevant factor like risk, dependency, or PBIs, or multiple external factors. So here also we can make a note. This also, they can ask in any of the interview what all are the external factor that your requirements or any changes required. So definitely the market condition, the dependency, the risk, uh, 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 dependency on the PBIs and the risk. The product backlog item that can be done in the next sprint are deemed as a ready for the selection. That is your DOR. So before the next sprint start, before that you will keep your requirement ready, where you can select, and that is called your DOR. So the product backlog item that can be done in the next sprint that are deemed as ready for the selection is definition of ready. This means that items are small enough to fit within the sprint, detailed enough and immediately actionable, that the developer can start working on them right away. And in other words, you can say that the product backlog item is ready when the Scrum team agree it can be done. Whenever they say it can be done, it will be get ready. TOR state. So always remember that product owner is accountable for defining a product goal and managing the product backlog. And the product goal for an online platform the product owner defined together with the stakeholder and the Scrum team. Product owner is also called as a voice of the client. Okay, so as per client, based on his requirement, he is a voice of the client or the stakeholder. So he will define it together, and next step, he will do the changes in the product backlog, and then now refinement will take place for the immediate sprint. Okay, so when immediate sprint will get a start, so before that your product owner will divide your epic user so epic user story, and then when the refinement will happen, so entire team will work on epic user story, tasks, subtasks, user story IDs, their estimation, sizing, acceptance criteria, and we use Atlassian Jira software tool, or you use Microsoft Azure DevOps tool for this agile planning and the portfolio or capacity management as a Scrum Master. So user story are relatively, a short description, a smaller chunks from your repeat and that feature, and there is a specific format, but there are multiple formats. You can choose any. So I usually follow the as a user. I want some objective, so that. So as a user, I want to create a home page of website so that my home page will contain uh, this whatever you outcome you require. Okay, so as a I want, so that the Scrum team decide which format work best, and based on that this will go on, while the product owner is accountable, so he can suggest in his own experience, or based on the project. So it does not mean that rest of the Scrum team cannot write, or say. They can definitely do that because it's a team collaboration, and they can also other team, the Scrum team, when they are working with the product owner, they can write the product backlog item or a user story and discuss them with the product owner. Okay, however the product owner will still remain accountable for the your product backlog. Okay, so the owner will talk, means your product owner will talk to the stakeholder and possibly to the customer to understand what is needed from business standpoint for the backlog, and the product owner can use anything, his notebook, a simple whiteboard, or anything to be write on a product backlog. Or nowadays we actually use the digital Jira or Azure. So it depends on the product owner. And product backlog is a transparent, and entire Scrum, this is based on the three pillar: transparency, inspection, and adaptation. So at estimate in the usual sense is a guess of the effort necessary to carry out given task, and it is based on the forecast of the earlier sprint. So in earlier sprint, if your complexity for a particular item you have used a 8 or 5, so based on that, based on the experience and the forecast, they work with the sizing part, the Scrum team. They compare the things to determine, right? So we call this as the relative sizing, and this would be a absolute sizing. So for a reason, okay, let me introduce you an approach that can help you with the relative sizing. So compared to a climbing, a building or a mountain, if it is a small hill or it's a kind of easy, if you want to climb or you want to climb a Mount Everest, that will be more complex. So based on that feature, you know the size and you will do the sizing. Okay, so Scrum mandates that each product backlog item is have its value. Okay, so simplest way to have a value is to create a simple value scale, and in a scale you can multiply value starting from say 100 to 1000. So my value is 100, okay, my value is 200, 300, 500. Based on that value you need to target, right? So each your product backlog, each PBI is having your value. And sprint backlog, during the sprint planning meeting, the product owner explain what's need to be done to increase the value of the product, and the entire Scrum team to formulate that sprint goal. And by collaborating with the product owner, the developer will decide uh, which item start from the top of the product backlog will be added to the sprint backlog, and the sprint backlog will also contain a plan to deliver the product increment and realize the sprint goal. Okay, so your sprint backlog contains what? Your PBIs plus the plan to deliver and the sprint goal. So let's take a minute, to have a look of this picture, this, that Excel data I have created, and we will have a quick look into that. Let's understand the difference between, got it right, the product backlog and the sprint backlog. Then we move further. So the product backlog is an order list of ideas of feature. The product should have the basically everything that could be done. We call this item at the list of product backlog item, PBIs. And the sprint backlog is created from the scratch at the beginning of every sprint and contains the product backlog item, PBIs, and that will be done in the current sprint, only current sprint, and its plan how to deliver the functionality and the sprint goal. So all the item in the sprint backlog come from the product backlog, and so the sprint backlog will be smaller, and in that epic will be divided into the user stories that contains into the PPIs. And a plan is essentially a decomposition of each product backlog item into a smaller work until that allow the developer to build that increment. Okay, and in practice we often call the smaller unit of work task, the task and that plan to handle how this will happen, and the sprint goal give the guidance and flexibility and explain why this sprint is valuable. Remember, whatever changes is required in the sprint goal you can do in a particular sprint planning. Once the sprint planning will be done, your sprint goal will never change. So when the developers select the product backlog item they think that can be completed in the sprint, they create a forecast for what will be the delivered, like a weather forecast, and the sprint forecast whatever they are looking, it's not a guarantee or a promise or a commitment then I'll do, but definitely you can do in a particular sprint backlog as a temporary artifact, and that exists only during the sprint, and they level best they achieve it. They are self-organized. Okay, so every sprint will have a new sprint backlog. Any unfinished work that remain in particular sprint backlog at the end of the sprint will put back into the product backlog again, and the product owner will decide what should happen next, while the product backlog is the product owner accountability for the sprint backlog, and the developer are accountable. So we can see that developer owns the sprint backlog. Nobody, not even the product owner, can make changes to it without collaborating with them. So here developer is the owner on the sprint backlog, and the entire changes, and nobody can interfere and ask them or impact means force them. So first the developer will modify the sprint backlog throughout the sprint as they think it is necessary to reach the sprint backlog. When they identify the new work that need to be done immediately or added to that sprint backlog, and the total remaining of the sprint backlog will be tracked at least once daily, that is your daily scrum. The developer are responsible for monitoring the progress toward the sprint goal. If the developer will be done with the work in sprint and time is there, they can pull work from the backlog and start with it. Okay, so the scope can be negotiated, but the sprint goal will be the remain same. So in their daily scrum, they based on the discussion, they do changes on the sprint backlog, not on the goal. Okay, so the scope of the sprint backlog is the amount of work selected by the developer. In other words, like the selection product backlog item, the scope is flexible and can be modified during the sprint. The term scope, sprint scope, or the scope of the sprint backlog are referring to the same concept. Everything is the same. So you, when you are doing the daily scrum, uh, based on the discussion, however with the time available, the developer will try to focus and they do their best to reach the sprint goal, and they do changes in the sprint backlog. That is your input. And the scope renegotiated with the product owner can happen with any time. The idea is to meet the supreme goal while making some compromises, usually a term of feature, never on the quality. In this process, the product owner and the developer decide which is best course of action. Okay, so item can be replaced with other item from the product backlog, or anything is possible as long as the sprint goal is not in danger. Okay, now increment. So the increment is a new version of the product and is an additive to all previous increment from the previous all previous sprint. The developer were delivered to at least a new product increment with each sprint they will deploy, and each new increment is an improved and usable version of the product. So in every sprint we are creating a new feature at least, and we are deploying it, and release that will be decided by the product owner. That that will be not in every sprint, it can be, but it will be decided together in the review meeting. So it is solely the discretion of the product owner if what to, when to release the increment. Still the increment need to be usable without needing any additional work. So everything like testing, documentation, and even the integrating it, the work the other Scrum team did, so we need to check it out. So when a product backlog item or the increment is considered a completed or done, everybody must understand what done means. What is your objective? What done means. So sometimes an organization may define that quality standard and those need to be followed as a minimum to make it easier for everybody to understand what complete work look like. This company should create the definition of done, which can be used to access if the work performed is following agreed the quality criteria and all. So or else the team is going to do that. So I know it is very hard to grasp this concept of complete work described in the definition of done, but always try to remember that definition of done is mostly about the quality of your product. Okay, so it is a organization standard, or if it is not done, then team is going to decide, but for organization standard. So in Scrum, it's a sprint will create at least one product increment that need to be added to the definition of done. If the product backlog item in the sprint does not follow the definition of done, it will be not included, considered as the product increment. So during the sprint, okay, is this a Scrum team gain more experience? It is expected that definition of done will be broad. If your Scrum team is more experienced, they have a cross-functional team, it is expected that your definition of done is broad and contain more strict criteria to ensure the higher quality. So during the sprint retrospective, the Scrum team plan on how to increase product quality, and one way to ensure this is by adapting the definition of done. There is no standard what the definition of done should include, as this can vary from team to team or and from product to product. But by using definition of done, it became transparent for everyone what it means for the product increment to be done. The definition of done will also guide the developer on how the product backlog item to choose during the sprint planning meeting. Based on my objective, I will choose this. So the definition of done represent the commitment for the increment. As soon as one product backlog item is completed and it meets definition of done, a new increment is created. So this DoD also checks and it is transparent for everyone whether it have the non-functional and functional requirement as a part of definition of done. So when should the definition of done be created? And essentially whenever you wish, as long as you don't want or breaking any rule. So the main requirement from the Scrum guide is that there must be definition of done during the sprint planning event. The best opportunity to do so at, is that at the end of the sprint, that is your during the sprint retrospective meeting, we are adapting the definition of done. Whatever we have done improvement, most of the improvement will take out and we adapt the definition of done. In the middle of the sprint is not a good idea because it may impact the forecast and any existing work that has been completed already. So a common topic of confusion is regarding the definition of done versus acceptance criteria. So definition of done tends to be more technical talk about the code, quality, code coverage, security, and the best practices based on the product, and how many code reviews are done, and so on. On the other hand, acceptance criteria are specific to a particular item, and acceptance criteria try to describe when an item is complete, mostly from the functional perspective, whether I can do this or not. So acceptance criteria apply on a single PPIs, while the definition of done applies to that PPIs, uh, whatever you are working, but also the entire product increment. The definition of done applies to every PPIs and increment, while the acceptance criteria applies to a single PPIs. So the definition of done is created by the Scrum team, while the acceptance criteria is typically created by the product owner, unless the product owner has delegated this responsibility to the developers. So the definition of done is the commitment to the increment. So the increment must always fulfill the definition of non-functional item is a part of product backlog, and definition of done is mandatory. That's Scrum. For one product backlog item to be released to the user, it need to meet the acceptance criteria if they exist and the definition of done. And the increment created from one or more PBIs also need to meet the definition of done. And the product backlog is managed by the product owner. The sprint goal is created by the entire Scrum team. These all are the important for the exam prospect or the certification perspective. Okay, so okay, so sprint goal will not change during this sprint. We have already discussed, and Scrum is your our whatever entire Scrum you have understood till now. It is based on, founded on. This is the important point, on empiricism, and all artifacts support these pillars like transparency, inspection, and adaptation. So these decisions are made to improve the value and control the risk are based on these. Here the sprint, when you start up with the sprint, which is your 1 month and less, so if you want to call out and take a suggestion for any technical expert, you can do that in your sprint planning. You can invite people in the sprint planning. Your no means in your daily Scrum only developers are there, no external people and member is allowed. And in your Scrum 2017, there was only developers who used to do this daily Scrum, and this is the one changes has been done in Scrum Guide 2020. If a product owner and a Scrum Master is involving in your development process of the product, they can participate as a developer, as a member. Okay, this is also an important interview or certification prospect question, the input and output for each event. So for your sprint planning, your input will be product backlog, where you are choosing the PBIs, your past performance, upcoming capacity, your forecast and all, and your definition of done. And the output will be, you are giving the sprint goal, that is your output. So which is the monitor by the entire development team. So your updated sprint backlog also. So if the question will come based on the option, you can choose that. So output will be your sprint goal and the updated sprint backlog, and this one, sorry, and the input will be your these three what I have mentioned. In the same way, your daily Scrum, your input will be your the tracking for the status for the sprint goal and the updated backlog item and all. And in your review meeting, your input will be the outcome of your sprint increment, whatever is the result, your product backlog, and your business condition. And the output is because here in your review meeting, you are meeting with the stakeholder and you are discussing the output and the increment. Okay, if anything is not a part of increment, not a part of release, it will go back to the product backlog. The product owner will think on the market condition, business condition, and release date that can be decided. These all are the input part. Your output part is your outcome, that is your updated product backlog, what has been added or anything, and your sprint outcome. In your review meeting, your output is you are adapting the definition of done, and you are input is you are looking around the individual interaction processes and tool and how the team has worked on. So this input and output is very important for the exam prospect, and sprint planning is your 8 hours, uh, uh, or less than, based on the sprint, maximum of 8 hours. Daily scrum will be 15 minutes, not more than that. Sprint review will be 4 hours based on the sprint. Maximum is the 4 hours, and sprint retrospective is maximum of the 3 hours. You have understood with the role and the responsibilities, and we have covered all the roles, artifacts, and the events. Okay, so we have gone into the detail with all the parameter we can see here. Let's move, we will quickly, let's understand quickly on the scrum events in detail. Now, how many scrum events are there? There are 5 scrum events. We also say that it's as a ceremony. Okay, so the sprint, which is a container and heart of the scrum event, sprint planning, daily scrum, sprint review, and sprint retrospective. Okay, so the sprint is 1 month or less. The sprint planning, we just we just discussed on the time boxes. So scrum is a time box event, and we need to make sure of these hours and the time back, and it contains the feedback loop. This does not mean that the Scrum team cannot have other meetings, but it is mandatory to have the Scrum events. So at the heart of the Scrum is the sprint, which act as a container for all Scrum events. And remember that there is no pauses, no gap between any sprint, and everything happen within the sprint container continuously. So events are designed to enable the transparency and inspection. Events are held at the same time and same place, and to maintain and create a routine and reduce complexity. So sprint planning, where the work to be performed in sprint is planned, and the daily scrum, which is held every day of the sprint review, which is held at the end of the sprint, and to review the increment. And the sprint retrospective, which is an opportunity to discuss way to improve our all scrum event, which are a formal opportunity to inspect and adapt. In other words, like, all the scrum meetings are excellent opportunity to get the feedback and to take action based on the feedback received. Okay, so as soon as the event has reached to the intended purpose, the meeting ends. The maximum time box is this, but it can end before also. So what is not allowed for a meeting to go over the time box in a scrum, and a scrum master should coach the scrum team with time boxes are important and how to manage their time better. So why time boxes are important? This is a very important, very important parameter, because in Agile and Scrum it is based on that. The base of that, हिंदी में आधार है ये उसका, कि हमें अर्ली फीडबैक लेना है एंड उसका बहुत टाइम बॉक्सेस में रखना है. एंड वाटरफॉल में हमारा जो रिलीजेस था वो हम लोग प्लान एंड ऐसे करके कैसे डिप्लॉयमेंट प्रोडक्शन में कैसे लाना है सब हमारा डिसाइडेड रहता है. लेकिन यहाँ पे हम स्मॉलर चंक्स में अपने स्प्रिंट को इटरेटिव सारा प्रोसेस करके, सारा इटरेशन करके, एंड हम लोग उसको डिलीवर करते हैं. तो फास्टेस्ट डिलीवरी होता है, कंटिन्यूअस होता है, एंड फीडबैक लूप इमीडिएटली आता है, एंड टाइम बॉक्स में रखते हैं. So why it is important? So, well, think about the following situation in your life. That is the best example. You do ever to have, you are going anywhere, and you are going to take a flight, okay, and you forget a important thing. Say your definitely you should not forget for that meeting the document you are carrying out, that definitely you need to carry and you to come back. But when you are going to take a flight and you forget your important shirt or a toothbrush or a small thing, and that can be manageable, right? You can buy it in an airport or at your destination, so you can pass it off these situation, and you will manage to board the flight and you will reach on the time. So you have moved this thing, right? So what you have focused, you have focused on your outcome. You have focused on your outcome, not on the previous, the process or the steps, right? In the same way, when you work on a real life on the board, Kanban board, Agile board, or a Scrum board, so you don't have to go actually when you limit workflow will be there, that to do work in progress or the done step, or you can add on there based on your limit and based on your project. You can increase your columns there, so you don't have to go left to right. You have to go from right to left. Look always right to left, because whatever is nearer, whatever things are very nearer to your outcome at your delivery, because once you fulfill, when you see right to left, whatever is very near to your outcome, and you can show the increment, and you can complete your increment, you can complete your particular target and deployment, and you can put into the release and take the feedback. So when you look right to left, you can quickly crack your outcome and convert it into a business value. So in Scrum, how this time boxes work, they force you to focus on the important thing in case whatever project you are doing, or you are catching a flight, anything. Okay, so you need to focus on the important thing and your business value, your revenue, income. So Scrum is trying to reduce the waste. When you are going left to right, you're looking everything, you waste can increase. So this is only your Scrum, your Agile, your Kanban, everything comes into the lean thinking. So let me introduce a small thing. Understand, a big egg is there, that is your lean. Inside that egg, your yolk is multiple yolk is, and that is your Agile, Scrum, Kanban. Okay, so what is your lean thinking? That will help you to eliminate waste, right? So Scrum is focused on to the two important thing and create a business value. Look into the ROI, return of investment, and Scrum is trying to reduce the waste, and Scrum must make the best decision based on the information available. So Scrum event can end before the time box expires, as long as the purpose of the event has been reached. Okay. If you have any extra time, you can just go ahead, and if you have completed your work before your sprint, 13 week of sorry 13 days sprint is there, and you have finished your in your 10th day or 9th day, so you can if you have extra time, you can go and pull out some product backlog, and you can use it. So in Scrum, we use pull method, not a push method. So difference is between a pull or push. Pull is you are an independent and you can choose your work based on your plan. Push is when a project manager will ask you to do. So it is Scrum is always a process manage follow the process management method, not the people management method. So the sprint has a duration of 1 month or less, which is in which the potentially shippable product increment is created. And in a short time, any development work must happen at a sustainable pace. If the duration of the sprint is too long, the complexity or the risk may increase. And having this relatively short horizon, it is easier to plan what is being built and to get a early feedback. And this allows the Scrum team to adapt the plan as they learn more. The idea of the sprint is to have the Scrum team focus on a sprint goal. Sorry, specific goal. Yeah, that is a sprint goal. So sprint are used to accomplish something, even if very small. Each sprint has a sprint goal and objective that will met within the sprint, which help the Scrum team better understanding and why we are building this increment. So the sprint is like a small project that should produce a working product by end of it, and at least after one sprint you should have the idea whether the process or your idea was good or bad, or a scrum is means whether you have to do any changes. So scrum is never about the getting everything right from the start. Over the time, when you move from one sprint to two sprint to three sprint, definitely things will be better, impediments will be less, and you will be having the more grip for the outcome. And that sprint contain all these event. It is flexible plan how to build the increment and the development whatever work is needed, which will be very honest and um, to uh, take a decision and occupy most of the sprint. Okay, so entire of you the sprint what it contains, so it contains the product backlog, the refinement activity or any other meeting whatever the team need to be relevant for the sprint. And it also essential that quality standard should not decrease in any circumstances, especially if the uh, uh, sprint is coming to end. So your quality should be definitely matching from the definition of done. It should not compromises on any aspect. Okay, so usually we consider in a daily practice probably 1 or 2 week sprint work best, and most commonly like sprint tends to 2 or 3 week long only. And especially if you're working on any software product, then the duration of a sprint should not be decided by the organization. The Scrum does not explicitly mention who get decide during the sprint. It will be self-managing team. The Scrum team is there who is going to decide on that, and they need to figure out this depending on the various factors, like a Scrum team in collaboration with the stakeholder, and the organization may decide the sprint duration. So and align it with the internal event. So everyone get collaborate. Scrum team, stakeholder, organization, and as a team they decide on the sprint duration. And here the product owner is the voice of the client everywhere, who will actually tells you on that and impact you, influence you on that the internal event or the current market condition or any other factor deemed to be relevant. So the sprint duration is not only the specific topic. So let's move on the sprint planning. Okay, so we have discussed sufficiently on the sprint, and yeah, so this is quite enough. And always remember that Scrum team capacity, the it will be depends on the amount of work and the sprint goal that Scrum Master used to do over the tool as well on Jira or Microsoft Azure DevOps, which we will learn. I have already created a separate video for that, and we will have a quick glance in this, the capacity planning and all. So once the sprint we have understood, the next event is the sprint planning event. The sprint planning event is all about the planning of the sprint, and is the first event of the sprint with any other Scrum event. The sprint planning meeting is a time box for the 8 hours for 1 month sprint or for the shorter sprint. As there is no gap between the sprint planning happened right after the conclusion of previous sprint, and there is no gap in any of the sprint. Starting a new sprint is always there should not be any delay on that. The sprint planning in a sprint planning, the Scrum team will define a sprint goal. They can release their work into the multiple times per sprint, and the sprint goal will also bring the transparency toward the stakeholder and help them to understand why the sprint is valuable. And if the product owner feel that the developer have to need to select more work and it is expected to do, so no one can stop, means it is only the sole developer who need to decide on that what is which PBI is important and to pull. Okay, the definition of done to identify the work, and they keep in the mind that they need to create at least one working increment at end of the sprint. Your sprint backlog will also never completed. They will pull the PPIs, their plan. The Scrum team will decide sprint goal, and uh, they will keep changing the sprint backlog, keep changes, keep updating based on the daily Scrum. Okay, so the daily Scrum, the third one is the daily Scrum is a time box event which is held daily at the same place and same time to reduce complexity from the 15-minute. And during this event, the development team plan what work will be performed in next 24 uh, hour. So the daily Scrum is a key for inspect and adapt. In the meeting, they discuss what they have done yesterday, what they have done today, and if they have any impediments on the blockers. Okay, do they see any impediments or blocker? And the Scrum Master is there for their help or any quick decision making. Okay, so in during this meeting, the role of a Scrum Master is to make sure that the development team, a Scrum Master will only participate if, as per the Scrum guide, if he or she is involved into the development process or the product owner, nobody else external person is allowed. Okay, usually in practice Scrum Master is there, and overall Scrum Master is there because some or other way he is involved, he or she is involved. Only in my project it is like that. And when I also took part in some of the suggestion and the development process, so we be there in the meeting. And a Scrum Master responsibility to make sure that the development team have this meeting, and it should be, all the event should be on time. It should be time effective, and it should be time box. So sprint review, by end of the sprint, development team should have delivered a potentially shippable product increment. And when what exactly the sprint review take place? So this sprint review is held at the end of the sprint to inspect the product increment and adapt the product backlog. The product owner owns this meeting, and he will invite the key stakeholder to the event, and also taking part of the development team and the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master role is to just facilitate this meeting and to make sure it is held within the time box. And this is most 4 hours of the meeting, and for a shorter sprint, it can be more shorter. So sprint review is an informal meeting, not a formal status meeting, because if you're getting the outcome of a sprint review, you don't need to wait for this sprint review. You can even inform the stakeholder your outcome before that. And this sprint review, the informal meeting happen like to demonstrate the increment is done in order to obtain the feedback and encourage the collaboration on what needs to be done next. So how exactly does this meeting works? A typical agenda of this meeting is something like the product owner explain with the product backlog item, and what have been done, what has not been done. And as a product owner is responsible for maximizing the value of product, it should explain how the product backlog item have helped to achieve that. And during this meeting, the development team make a live demonstration. Is not just the representation or presentation or in a PPT. It should be a live demonstration of the product backlog item they have been done, which is actually the highlight of this meeting. It is particularly valuable to the stakeholder try out for the product and their own hands-on in order to get a better understanding what has been built. And the development team also discuss what went well, what problem they have encountered, and how to solve them. Next, the product owner discuss the product backlog and explain what next release might be available based on the progress till date, and the entire group collaborate what to do next and discuss the changes in the marketplace. Uh, means This step involves the strategic planning on what is important to do next, and this meeting is not only the good opportunity for the Scrum team to gather the feedback, but also for the stakeholder to ask the question or any suggestion which changes or new feature is required to the product owner. To interact with the stakeholder, a Scrum team can interact any point of time. It is not only they have to wait for the sprint review, they can do any point of time. And often this meeting can result the revised product backlog based on the feedback and the new opportunities to the market. And as we just previously looked, that during this meeting only done product backlog item are being reviewed. What happened with the product backlog item that have not been done yet, they are not fully done. So if any functionality has not been built and any more testing is required, that will be considered as not completed yet. And so that first of all there will be it will be not get demonstrated during this meeting. They should be not a part of the product increment, and they will put back into the product backlog. The last the sprint retrospect, the last one is sprint retrospective. The sprint retrospective is the very last event of the sprint, right after the sprint review, but prior to the sprint planning. While the sprint review meeting focus on the inspecting the outcome and adapting the product goal. Okay, for the sprint retrospective is to inspect and adapt the process, individual and interaction, and adapt the definition of done. Only teams that reflect on what happened to identify what to improve in the future and can more effective by adapting the development process and making it more enjoyable. So as per Scrum 2020, it should also happen on the same place and same time. And in 2017, the fixed place is not there, and here only the Scrum team is there, not the stakeholders. So the sprint retrospective, but as per the 2020, to reduce complexity, to same place and same time. The sprint retrospective is an internal Scrum event where no external parties, will come up, and either a stakeholder or a management, and the Scrum team will work on the effectiveness. The Scrum master actually work on the how effective is the meeting, and the Scrum team uh, uh, discuss regarding the improvement of the process should be done, and the Scrum master will act as a facilitator for this meeting and ensure that everybody understand the purpose and ensure the meeting is positive and productive, and coaches that everything is on a time box. We will look these the responsibility more deeper, especially on the Scrum master, because the Scrum master will serve a product owner, will establish the Scrum, and also serve the development team. So we will look into that. Here the sprint retrospective, the purpose, it is into the last sprint event regardless to the people, relationship, processes and tool, and usually they adapt the definition of done and most of the improvement, measure of the what went well and potential improvement. So here it is Scrum Guide 2017. This is also one of the change in 2017 and 2020 Scrum Guide. In 2017, it was minimum of one improvement used to take, but in 2020, most of the important improvements are identified and will be considered here. Okay, so team want to improve the definition of done in the retrospective. They discuss and they adapt this thing. Okay, so before we move into the okay, so move into the let's understand cancelling of the sprint, whether in respect of on interest of time, I will just quickly try to cover. But let's move the next. Let's cover this topic as well. Canceling the sprint. So canceling a sprint before the time box expire is very rare occurrence. Almost I have not seen till now, but it is very rare occurrence a sprint can be cancelled if the sprint goal become obsolete, or if there are some major changes or sudden changes on a market happens, and if the company decide that change the direction. Let's take an example of there is a release. Team is working on particular project. Release is on a third week, and client want them to get release on the second week because it is highly important. Otherwise, there will be no use of that particular feature or that product. Then in that case, the product owner will take a decision to make it early, this thing, which is very rare. uh, but it will discuss with the team and it will be done. And if the objective of that software it is very outdated in the market and it is no value after 2 week or a third week, then based on the client request the sprint can be cancelled. Okay, so uh, the company can decide based on the change direction from the organization or the client. But again, because sprint are usually very short, actually, this is the most great part of the Scrum and Agile, and because sprint are very short, this is really an extraordinary event and very uncommon to cancel. It is very short, so if any risk are there, we can quickly come up with some mitigation plan. Nevertheless, only the product owner has the authority to cancel the sprint, and it may also be advised by the stakeholder and the development team and the scrum master, but only the product owner can take a decision. If the sprint is cancelled, the product backlog item that are completed will be reviewed, and incomplete backlog item will be re-estimated and put back into the product backlog. Now, in the to understand more into the responsibility of a scrum master especially and the product owner, so let's go back to our scrum team topic and better understand what they actually do. So this scrum team consists of a product owner, a development team, that is developer, and a scrum master. So what is important to remember about this team? So scrum team is a self-organizing and cross-functional self-organizing team that they choose how to best accomplish the work rather than being directed by outside or others, any of the team member. This means they make a decision what it comes to how the product should be built, and also about the aspect of their work. And cross-functional team means that skill required and needed to accomplish the work without depending on others not a part of the team. Especially it comes for the example for technical expertise needed in creating the product. The Scrum team is designed to optimize flexibility, creativity, and productivity. This is also one of the important question for the exam prospect or the certification prospect, because the Scrum, what is the quality of the Scrum team? Uh, they optimize flexibility, creativity, and productivity. The Scrum team tries to deliver product in an incremental way and always try to maximize the opportunity for the feedback. In that Scrum team, let's start with the product owner. The main responsibility of the product owner is to maximize the value of the product resulting from the work of the development team. Value can be business value, meaning more income or a better exposure in the marketplace, or a value for the customer, which often can translate into business value as well as the technical value. So it's really depend on the context where the scrum is applied, but also to ensure and remember the main responsibility of a product owner is to maximize the value wherever it is. The product owner is a one person, not a committee, not a group of people, only a one person. The product owner may represent a desire of the committee or a CEO or the stakeholder of the product backlog, but those wanting to change the product item priority must make it through the product owner any changes. If a CEO also of the company come and ask the development team directly they do these changes, then the first step the developer should discuss with the product owner how feasible and decision can be taken and how it will work out based on the client requirement, and then only decision will be come off if what changes is required or not required and what to do. um, that. And this is the another key aspect when it comes to this role, the fact that product owner is a person, is not left to chance but a decision made on the purpose within the scrum, and it's all related to the responsibility. The product owner is in the end of the sole responsible for the outcome, and so nobody should go over him or her when it's come to the decision such as product backlog ordering. Additionally, no one can force the development team to work from a different set of requirements, not the stakeholder, not the CEO, nobody in a same way. And the developers are the owner for their sprint backlog and their DOD. The DOD will be get decided by the Scrum team, but we are working on a particular sprint. The developers will be taking care. For the product owner to succeed, the entire organization must respect his or her decision, and this might at a time for some organization it's hard to do that, but actually this is a key value of a Scrum, to respect each other, a product owner, a Scrum master, and the developers, tester, everybody in a team. So nevertheless, everything is made transparent. Product owner decision are visible in the content and ordering the product backlog. It should always be clear what the development team will be working on next, so that product owner is the sole person responsible for managing the product backlog, and product owner needs to make sure that product backlog item are clearly expressed and understood by the development team. And the key aspect, remember that development team performs through managing the backlog and mostly through the order of the item within the backlog. The product owner may do the above work or have the development team to do that, but however product owner still remain accountable. He can ask someone to manage the product backlog ordering or anything. Any developer or lead can do that, but product owner will remain accountable. This means that product owner can delegate some tasks to the developers, but he or she can accountable for the outcome. But and there is no proxy product owner and all. There is no term like as per the Scrum guide of the proxy product owner. So he can definitely delegate some tasks, but he is the accountable for the outcome. But and only the product owner discretion. Nobody can force the product owner to do that. Always remember there is no project manager role in Scrum, and in general product owner role is not get confused by the project manager or Scrum master. It says in Scrum the responsibility of a project manager are distributed between the product owner and the Scrum master, and rest of the team. Additionally, nobody is reporting and giving a status to the product owner. So the development team, the development is consist of specialists who have all the skill in order to do the work needed. Their goal is to create a potentially realizable increment at end of the each sprint. So let me give you example of my own Scrum team where I am working. So the client is the product owner, and I am a Scrum master, and entire development team for each module where one person team is a cross functional for each module who is the owner and taking place. So we have kept it two people with the help of demand versus supply, the PMOs, and the project program and project management. So one person and one person is the backup for the same. So one of the delivery lead who is also taking care for the development entire part on the SQL side. I'm also taking care of some of the development side from Azure DevOps, but also at the time of absence he can become their backup. In the same way, the Java person or other quality people example, or any data quality module, if anybody is working, so everybody is having a backup. So this is a cross-functional team. Wherever if anything is required, work will not suffer, work can be done. So this is very important while doing as a scrum master. You are doing the capacity planning and all, and as a team we all, means product owner, in the development team, the scrum master take care that our DOD should be on time and should be the increment should be as per the DOD. So it is worth mentioning that the development team member can work on the product increment, and the development team is structured and empowered by the organization to organize and manage their own work. In this way, the efficiency and effectiveness of the development team are optimized. The development team share a few important characteristics. The team is a self-organizing. Nobody, not the scrum master, product owner, stakeholder, or the CEO, tell how to do their work, which tool you use or anything similar. The emphasis here is on the self-organizing. They call the shots when it comes to how the product backlog should be turned into potentially shippable increment. So self-organizing applies to other aspect of their day-to-day work as well. So when it comes to problem solving or decision making, the team is cross-functional. This means it has all the skill needed to create the product increment. The skill need to be in the team done, but it doesn't mean that every team member should be cross-functional just as a whole. So every individual have the specific quality, and as a team they are cross-functional. While each team member have a specific area of expertise, the accountability for the work belong to the development team as a whole. So Scrum Guide suggested that as a final side note, and while not recommended, it is possible for a product owner or a Scrum Master to be a part of the development team if they are doing the work of the sprint backlog. I really like this, and when I was preparing for the Scrum Master and Product Owner certification from Scrum.org, exactly starting, the 2020 year, financial year, and this changes has been come up in the month of. I think it was heard in the month of November. This is going to become, and after 9th of January exactly the exam pattern got changed. So when was my preparation was going on, and I was looking Scrum Guide 2017 in November, December, and also Scrum Guide 2020. So I decided let me give this exam after 9th of Jan so that I can get a new uh, uh, format of the exam, and I really like this one of this thing. As an individual, it also matches to my passion, but I like the changes, even though in practice, long before the organization are doing that. It's not like that they are not doing that, but the passion to become a Scrum Master, not only the Agile coach, because they have even though in Agile you have multiple methodologies, right? You have your Lean, Kanban, you have extreme programming, Crystal methodologies, multiple things are there. So broad area you are going to cover, but the passion to become not only the 90%, the 100% of the Scrum Master. So when this Scrum Guide actually said that it is possible for a product owner and the Scrum Master to be a part of the development team, and based on your own bandwidth, and you can take a decision on that to work with the sprint backlog. This is really uh, provide versatility role for any Scrum Master, as per me. Okay, so let's move into the Scrum Master role because we are discussing this. So the Scrum Master assists the development team, and the product owner is the responsible for promoting and supporting Scrum within the organization. You can see that Scrum Master as a Scrum coach. A Scrum Master is doing this by helping everyone understand the the Scrum theory, practices, rules, and values. The Scrum Master helps those outside the Scrum team, for example, the stakeholder, understand which of their interaction with the Scrum team are helpful and which are not. When it's come to the Scrum team itself, the Scrum Master is a skilled, true leader, I should say, and the Scrum Master put the team before himself or herself. So in 2017 Scrum Guide, a Scrum Master is a skilled servant leader exists to serve the people, and in Scrum Guide 2020, Scrum Master is a true leader exists and put them before himself or herself as a team to serve them, um, the team and establish Scrum. I keep you telling the differences because this can also one of the good question at the time of interview or certification. You can catch it accordingly. So it's also not making any decision or controlling the development team in how they create the product increment. So the main point here is the Scrum Master is a facilitator and a coach. The goal is to serve the Scrum team in order to maximize the value created. How is the Scrum Master serving the development team? The Scrum Master does that in several ways. The Scrum Master has to define the empowerment that the development team has and to coach it regarding the self-organization and the cross-functionality. It can also have the hard task of coaching the development team in organization environment in which Scrum is not fully adopted and understood. So here the word coaching, so there is coaching, training, mentoring, everything is and different, and you will go through the scrum.org, will get into a more or a lean six sigma. Everywhere you will see the business strategy, and based on that you have to make an impact analysis or a result analysis, and you can or whether coaching, mentoring, and training, the differences. That is the other next level. So not required here, so I have just explained you. So based on that, a Scrum Master will decide so what need to be opt. One important focus is to help the development team create high value products. The Scrum Master is successful if the team is successful, and sometimes impediments are in a team where a Scrum Master help to remove those impediments regardless in their nature. I used to do a tip like I create the impediments tracker and the result and do the gap analysis, and based on that tracker it is very helpful to give you the result. At the time, the Scrum Master will need to work people within organization to address those issues. Any unsolved problem put the sprint outcome in danger, and therefore the Scrum Master need to act promptly. The Scrum Master is also facilitating a Scrum event as requested or needed, with an emphasis of the word facilitating. So never misunderstood, or don't misunderstand that facilitating means that setting up and booking and arranging the room or anything else. No, the Scrum Master is not just to assist the team or somebody said the secretary. He or she just need to make sure that event happen when requested or needed, and as a team they need to fulfill that outcome. So how is the Scrum Master serving the product owner? The Scrum Master coaches the product owner for the better understand. So Scrum Master is not only the facilitating the meeting, he listen to the parameter if they stuck on any of the development part, any of the glitch is coming, technical glitch is in, technical depth is there. So he will inform to the product owner, he will discuss with the client, he will come up with the plan and the any bottleneck is there with the solution, discuss and remove that blocker, remove that impediments. So Scrum Master is establishing the Scrum, serving the development team, and Scrum Master serving the product owner in different way around. So Scrum Master coaches the product owner to better understand the practice, agility, and Scrum. This means that Scrum Master should teach the product owner to understand and apply the benefit and the best practices of Agile and Scrum. It happens in real scenario when an organization or team is not fully opting the Agile. Then in that point of time, multiple glitches will come that organization culture on the change ecosystem will get impacted. It is very important to practice Agile and Scrum as a whole. So Scrum Master will take care of this. He or she ensure that goal, scope, and the product domain are understood by everyone in the Scrum team as well as possible. This is important because in case if there is any missing or unclear stuff is there with the development or anywhere will later encounter the issue while creating the product. It is not only the within team but within an organization or computer society to try level best to establish the Scrum and Agile. It is very important, extremely important, the development team and product owner understand the need for a clear and concise product backlog item, and Scrum Master is there to help that this should be adapted so that there should not be any delay in the work. In order to maximize the value, the Scrum Master will mentor the product owner on how to manage the product backlog to ensure it is ordered and in a healthy state. The Scrum Master need to make sure that product owner understand how to do product planning in the empirical environment for the product owner, and product planning is very important in order to meet the business goal. How the Scrum Master so uh, okay, so the Scrum Master also overall the Scrum Master also facilitate the planning, backlog refinement even and needed or requested by the product owner. So how the Scrum Master is serving the organization. Very good topic, and you will get a deep dive on them. I'll especially recommend to go into the scrum.org site, get a deep dive on it, read the Scrum guide, and we go into the scrum.org website. It is a very good explanation how a Scrum Master is serving the organization. So the Scrum Master is leading and coaching the organization in its Scrum adoption and is planning Scrum impediments. For example, the Scrum Master can interact and collaborate with different departments that need to be changed in order to succeed with the Scrum. The Scrum Master has to explain why change is necessary and to lead the organization in that direction. This Scrum Master can work with other Scrum Master within the organization to achieve this goal. Yes, this is possible. This is very common question. Means I have seen in many of the webinars. So they ask, so a Scrum Master can work together with the other Scrum Master, to work on any plan and achieve this goal. The Scrum Master can also cause change that increase the productivity of the Scrum team by improving the internal processes that affect the team or any training is required which is causing the delay in the work. Sometimes Scrum and the empirical product development are not understood by the stakeholder on the other people also. So within the organization, the Scrum Master is there to coach them about the Scrum or any topic related to them. Okay, this is all about the roles, and before we get into the jump on technical depth and the other topic, this is also one of the important question: backlog grooming or backlog refinement. Is there any difference? No. Backlog grooming versus backlog product refinement, both are same. Yes, it is possible. It looks very similar, but this is before we were using backlog grooming, but nowadays we are using, that is the older what we are using, and now we are using the backlog refinements. So it is typically you have already joined an organization you are going to join. So based on the organization or a team which are using the Agile and Scrum practices, so whether you are using the word backlog grooming or the refinement. So grooming is little slightly older, but the meaning is absolutely same as the backlog refinement. Okay. So, also important question, functional and non-functional requirement, which we have discussed that your definition of done will cover your functional and non-functional requirement. So, functional requirement is a requirement that can be typically be easily understood by the product owner, by the stakeholder, or by the user of the product. Is a function of product. It is something that you can do with the product, so it's a functional requirement. It describes a function of the product, the possibility of the ordering something using the website. Now you right now, going to the non-functional requirement, they describe quality, behavior, attributes, because whatever is required in a website we have done, but whatever the security, qualities, behavior, attribute, the constraint it is coming when you are opening into the different browser, that can be placed into the multiple category, based on their performance, security, availability, and the usability. These are the non-functional requirement. So let's take an example of e-commerce platform, and you having a website. So you will look into the multiple browser, their performance, security, availability, right? So the performance of each transaction, such as placing a new order, you're placing a new order and viewing an existing one, you must complete for 2 seconds. Within that peak time, platform should support 5,000 concurrent transaction. Security is there or not, all the external code library used in the application must go through the security testing tool, and that ensure that there are no known security vulnerabilities are not their usability, that the platform must support visually impaired customer and follow the best practices in the industry. Okay, so you can see that these non-functional requirements are not so easy to grasp, but definitely so it is adapted by the definition of done, and it is also a part of product backlog. So now, while functional requirement are a part of product backlog, so it is also happened that non-functional requirement apparently they by the product owner, they are a part of product backlog and the product increment. So the most common approach to describe the non-functional requirement in definition of done. So your definition of done contains the both. So product backlog is the single source of requirement for any changes made through the product, and there should not be any misses. We add them. Non-functional requirement can be expressed as a product backlog item only, or as an acceptance criteria for the product backlog item. So both the options are acceptable. Non-functional requirement can go into the product backlog and in the definition of done. Okay. Okay. So we have already gone through now the technical depth and the engineering standard. So engineering standard is the professional, usually it is for PhD certification, professional Scrum developer or anything of an art Scrum developer. So engineering standard refers to the set of rules and convention within the development organization that applies to all the product being developed. Technical debt is very common, and we should overcome on that with someone over the time it is getting addressed and being completed, but it from the starting we should be very conscious on that. What is technical debt? The fact that the files code were not organized after the first work was finished and everything taking so longer. Yeah, so this is a technical debt. For example, if your first developer any developer has worked on particular module, and then the second developer or you are working on that module, and some of the code are not there in a repository or in a organized way or without a comment, anything can be possible, right? So it can be a technical debt because it is taking much longer time to address. The technical debt is also known as design debt or a code debt. So unresolved this technical aspect from the past performance come back and haunted you today. So this thing you never know that how technical debt can affect you. So technical debt is something that should be continuously dealt with and not postponed. You should be sorted out very soon as you come across. It is a part of development approach, and it's a continuous process similar to the architecture of the product, which is continuously being worked and on the improve. Okay, so while in the short time product seems to be work, it is very important. If it is too short cuts has been taken to by the development team, there can be a chance to fix in future, and bad decision can come out from the past. So technical debt is tightly coupled with the quality of the product, and the development team should continuously work together with the product owner to keep the technical debt manageable and to be sorted out. Sometimes creating a technical debt internally is not possible, and it is not intentional as well, but we should be on top of that. And first of all, if we all are transparent, we ensure which we are following in Agile and Scrum, it is very important to reduce the technical debt in every sprint. One of the important topic is the cone of uncertainty. How is the cone looks like? Imagine, right? The term cone of uncertainty is used in the software development where the technical and business environment are constantly evolving. You write a V, one is the technical environment, one is the business environment, and constantly evolving. At the start of the project, comparatively little is known about the product and work result, and the uncertainty is high. As more is learned, uncertainty tends to decrease. You can look into more single polar or hyperpolar graph that can come into the question, but everything is related to your cone of uncertainty. So as more is learned, the uncertainty tends to decrease. Okay, so let's revisit the rule. One product means one product backlog. One product backlog means one product owner. One product means one product owner. Okay, so one team will have a product owner, a scrum master, and the development team. So let's look into the this small Excel, the data. So, or let's take an example in this way. Two teams work on a same product. So both teams must have the same product owner, which is a person. Each team will have a scrum master. The scrum master role can be played by one person, which will be handled by both the team or two different person. Both scenario are within the scrum rule. Now let's take an example where two teams are there and they are working on the different product. Then each team will have a product owner and a scrum master. The product owner or a scrum master role can be played by one person, which is handled both team, or two different person, or any combination of these. So understand the difference between a person and the role. So one person can be played different role. Scrum guide set condition on the role, not necessarily on the individual person. So two different product owner can be there, or same product owner can be work on the both product. So the rule is pretty simple. For one product, there can be only one product backlog, one product owner, and even if the multiple team work on the same product, then there will be single product backlog and a single product owner. So it is and the increment will be single. Your definition of done will be same. So it is important to have a single person responsible for the end result. So so in Scrum Guide, there is no chief product owner or a process product owner. So everybody needs to understand the done means, and all the multiple teams are working together. So the sprint duration means if multiple teams are working, then it is not necessarily all the sprint will start and end time will be the same. It can vary. So we should track on the dependency should not be there more, and increments are the same. Okay, so this everybody need to understand that product increment done is only common and only when it is integrated, usable, and potentially releasable. As long as it does not conflict with the common definition of done that was defined for all the team. So when multiple team work on a same product, the sprint are not aligned the same, but end of the each sprint of a development team, only the product increment must be integrated and same DOD will be there. And sprint length are aligned, meaning they may start and end with the same time and same length. And Scrum does not have requirement to state this. The only requirement to work should be integrated by end of the sprint. That doesn't matter that for team A, sprint 1 is for 13 days and sprint 2 is for 14 days, and for team B sprint 1 is for 7 days and sprint 2 is for 8 days, or sprint 3 is for 10 days. So all the team have the same sprint duration, that is pretty good and start and end date, but it can be go in a vice versa way we discussed. So this process is a bit easier to manage, especially in the organization and team have different sprint length, so the sprint are not aligned. So please remember, there is no integration sprint or hardening sprint in the Scrum. When the multiple Scrum team work on the same product. Okay, so the definitive guide, the Nexus Scrum scaling, the rule of this game is in this diagram. You can look deeply into that, and you can refer to the Nexus guide as well, which you will get in scrum.org. So all the process will be same. You have one product backlog, one product owner, multiple teams are there, they have their separate sprint planning, daily scrum, sprint review, sprint backlog, sprint retrospective, and their scrum master will be meeting often and to discussing on the there, and based on that, on a certain time they will be meeting on a sprint retrospective, and finally when the outcome will be there, then sprint review and sprint retrospective, and Nexus sprint, that is called actually Nexus sprint review and Nexus sprint retrospective, and that will be targeted. So as usually for one team, 3 to 9 person will be there in the Scrum team, and they can meet often, like having a small tea break or a coffee break, and they can interact and discuss on that, usually what happen in the industry. And here they interact with them and they work on a particular product, whatever they have got the module on, whenever the a weekly or a monthly or a quarterly or a monthly, whenever the meeting has been set up, they discuss on their input and the output. And here in it is called Nexus sprint planning, Nexus sprint backlog, integrated, increment, because the increment is the integrated, right? You have a daily one is your daily scrum, which is having an individual team is taking, and one all the team is meeting, that is called your Nexus daily scrum, when they discuss on the integrated increment. So let me give you an example. You are working in a healthcare domain and working on a CT scanner machine, right? So CT scanner machine is having, it scan the whole body. Somebody is working on a brain, somebody is working on a heart, somebody is working on a stomach, somebody is working on a backbone side or any other thing, and in last somebody is working on a physio operating model. So and last they are making an integrated increment. So you are giving that integrated increment, and dependency should be less on the other team, so that you can work independently and you can provide the Nexus sprint integrated increment. That is your Nexus framework, and that is also called Scrum of Scrum or Scrum scaling. Okay, so we have gone through. Let me let's understand one more thing. A different kind of team will be there: feature team and the component team, right? So what is feature team and what is component team? The team will have to work through all the layer of the component in the application. You have to go through all the layer of the order of the implement most of the feature. That is your feature team. So feature team will work through all the layer of the feature, and the person developer is having a knowledge on that to fulfill the customer need. Your front end layer, your back end layer, your business logic layer. So a feature team is a cross functional and cross component, because it has all the skill needed to complete all the feature, and does that by working through all the layer of the component of the application. Another way around, component team, a layer of the component is just one part of the product that is responsible for performing a certain duty. For example, a user interface handles the interaction with the customer and send any input to the next layer. So layer team is focused on a single or a multiple component of the system. So a component team alone will typically not able to deliver a new functionality. So using the component team increase the dependency between the team, and at the time reduces the chances of producing and integrated the product increment by end of the sprint. So while this is not explicit in the Scrum guide, feature team are the desirable, and they are closer to the cross-functional aspect of this deliver in the Scrum guide. So nevertheless, feature team is not mandatory in this Scrum. And usually what happen when you work on a Kanban board, usually the component team here they prefer, okay, not mandatory, they prefer the feature team in Scrum, but in Kanban they prefer the component team, because they are looking for the specialist on the particular area or model to work on. We will get a deep dive on difference between these Kanban, Agile, Lean, and all the different methodology. Here I have not covered, but I'm going to make a separate video on that. So we are done with all the entire, major feature. Let's quickly look into the report and matrices. Our Scrum Master will make up. We will look into the burn up, burn down chart and the velocity chart to create a matrices and the performance of the and the team. So the burn-up chart provide a visual representation of a sprint completed work related to its total scope, which is represented by the number of selected product backlog item or the stories. Okay, so it is quite similar to the burn down chart, with the difference that any added work will be visible in the change of its scope. And you can remember, you can look into any of the graph, and you Google it, you will get to know. And you can remember that Scrum does not enforce any of the reporting tool or the chart what we are discussing. It is totally up to the Scrum team which tool to use. Okay, so burn down chart is how many work remaining is there. That is a burn down chart. Burn up chart, that is how much the work has been completed or any work has been added or not. So usually the team focusing on these charts, burn down or burn up charts. Velocity chart is that which will measure the amount of work the development team can handle during the sprint. It will provide you the performance and how we are doing on it and how near we are to the goal, which will measure the amount of work developer can handle and doing during the sprint and during the sprint planning meeting. The development will select the number of PBIs and the user stories, and that the estimation and the story points, and how much time they are taking to complete each user story to complete, and the total number of story point of the sprint. So the velocity is calculating by averaging the amount of work performing on the previous sprint. So typically only completed stories are taking into consideration, and more sprint are included, and more accurate is the value. So how you calculate? So velocity will be your, for example, in your sprint one, your highest story point is say 8, right? Sprint 2 is anything. It will be based on a story point is on a Fibonacci series. Okay, so Fibonacci series like 1, 2, 3, then 5, then 8, then 13, then 21, and so on. So like that, in velocity, sprint 1 story point plus sprint 2 story point plus sprint 3, the total of the story point you will write here, the sum you will do, and then divided by the number of sprint. That is, we have taken example, so you will do that 3. That will be your velocity for the entire so one of the chart that agile project usually actually, prefer, many of the organization and very, they are considering like burn down chart or this velocity measurable progressive chart and all. Okay, so we have covered all the topics, and let's look into the tool part. And I have created a detailed video for Jira, how Jira works with the Scrum, Kanban board, Agile board, and how Microsoft Azure DevOps work into the Agile and portfolio and capacity planning management. That is the detailed deep dive. You can definitely look in these two videos. You will get the, how we work on that and the step behind that. I will quickly cover the small glance on that and the quick step to work on the items here. So Jira tool contains Confluence, um, that is very good repository where you can, multiple teams are working and you can save all the documents and the code in Confluence. Atlassian Confluence, I'll recommend everyone to use that. Jira tool contains a test management tool, bug reporting and tracking tool, test management activities, agile project management, tool, automating the task. So how you will do that? So you, in your laptop, just install and configure the Jira tool. You can go to atlassian.net, and you can just, download the instant of Jira tool, and you can add till 10 user, and it is free for 30 days. It is an open source tool and anybody can use and try, and you can create your account. You can choose the Scrum board in that, and you can create a project, and look, create a dashboard. I'll give you the notes on that. So you can create a dashboard, you can add people, create a team, and then you can, if you need to give you the access, you can go to the project setting and get you the all the people group access, and you can do that. When you look into my Jira uh, video, you will get all the notes and entire steps I have written down there, and also the live steps you can see. So as per that, you can start a sprint and add the stories. You can create the issues, edit and add the issues. That you can create, all issue type. So this is also one of the important question. What are the issue types? The epic, bug, story, task, subtask will come up in the Jira, and you can definitely do that. So you will be having your active sprint ready, and in that, once you are done with your creating project, adding a team, backlog, epic stories, and if sprint are active, so in your Jira you can create different type of issues in that, and workflow will be there. So you can track on that what is in to-do list, what is in progress, what in done stage. Based on that, you can add on any column in your workflow. So this is all about the Jira. So Jira can be used in a project management, in a development task, in a QA task. So multiple way around that can be used. In a project management, it would be used in the entire workflow, big stories, roadmap, iteration development, confluence, velocity chart, burn down chart, version report, everything you can track as a project manager in the Jira board. As a developer task, you can, take the requirement details in the confluence, the data and all the designing, the coding part, the unit testing, the integration testing, workflow, code review, the bug fixes, and any meetings that happening, the details of that, the MOM and all can be captured in the confluence. As a QA task, you have all the understanding of the requirement, then data and the document will be there. You can get into the confluence, and the writing the test scenario, writing the test cases, the test review, the test data preparation, test environment setup, test execution, so retesting bugs, meeting automation, any other that you can found in the Jira board. Okay, you can take a multiple, in a if I need to get you little more deep dive in Jira, so you can take a small example that you are creating a login page, right? In a website you are creating a login page, so you have created a project name, say ABC is your project name, you have a client XYZ is your client name, created by the product owner, that start and end date will be there. You will create an epic. Okay, I'm creating a new e-commerce website, and which is to be launched, and business value will be something blah blah blah, and you will be having multiple user stories, and you'll create user ID of 1 2 3 4. And for a login page, you have created a feature of registration, login, log out, or any special feature if you want to put on. So user story, you need to write as a user some objective and what outcome you need. So as a first time visitor to the e-commerce website, I want to register my account so that I can log into the application. Okay, now for login registration, once you're done for login page, as a registered user, I want to log into the website so that I can see my account details. For a logout, as a registered user, I want to log out from the website so that I can't access my account. So the status will be, when you are having a new user story, it will be new. When in work in progress, it will be WIP, and when it will be done, it will be done. So acceptance criteria will be same, the requirement will given by the product owner, and new user should be able to register account with the valid data. This is your acceptance criteria. So new user should be able to register account with the valid data only. Login acceptance criteria will be, system must be validate user credential and that allow login if the credential are correct, and system must log out after the login, and user should be able to search the product and add them in a cart. So those kind of acceptance criteria will be there, and you can create and plan like that. And you can write the test cases, upload the test cases in the Excel. You can put any link is there, and you can manage the team through the different project. And if you have any doubt, you can also definitely go to the support.atlassian.com in Jira Software Cloud, and you will get a very good documents there to get into the release for your team or a project in the version, and what release 1, release 2 you are doing that. So managing version will be there, release hub will be there. You can have a look on that. So when you are putting a one release, so what you will cover, so you will create a version, right? So you'll create a version. What should be there? The start date should be there, end date should be there, version details should be there, what all issues you have done in that version, that sprint, that should be there, and the filter of that version will be there. So there is a different, here we are using the term version in Azure Deposit to use the term of release. So only the term is different, but overall concept will be exactly same in Jira and the Azure DevOps, while you do the agile planning and the portfolio management. Okay. So this is all about the Jira, where you can keep a track on your code, your project, your burnout report, your team, your capacity, and that release, that burn down report will help you to understand how your team is progressing towards the completion of the version. And the report shows that your team velocity relative to the current version, and how scope changes have affected the progress and the estimated number of sprints needed to complete the remaining work. So overall, we have just covered and look into all the agile Scrum activities, how to create project in Jira, how to add user people in the Jira, how to create a backlog epic in Jira, how to create stories in Jira and add the story print, how to means creating the sprint in the Jira, adding user story to the sprint, starting the sprint, adding the subtasks, sprint life cycle, test management activities, your roadmaps, your version, your burn down chart, all the activities. As a QA quality analyst, we have seen the test management activities, that test data, test cycle, update the test cases, passes, reporting work, and their reports cycle, all the kinds of reports we have gone through. And the test steps are there, what all the test steps are there, what test data you have taken, what the test result you are getting based on your scenario and the test cases. So what is scenario? Scenario is a one line of the requirement. You have a scenario for the login page creation, and in that what are the test cases are there, the registration, login, logout, all the test cases you have written in the different test data and the description with and with the result, whether passing or failing or anything is. Okay. So this is all about we have covered in the Jira board. Now let's have a look for the Microsoft Azure DevOps board. In Azure DevOps, Agile project management and Scrum project management, the we will work, team will work. The step one will be working with the teams, working with the work items. What all those are there? So working with the team areas and the iteration. So how you will start up with that? You will go to the project setting. You will configure the project, you will create a team, you will see the way you have created a sprint in Jira, you will select the iteration and you will start up with your sprint. Same process will be there. You need to choose there either Agile board, Kanban board, or the Scrum board. In a Microsoft Azure DevOps, you'll get in a drop down when you will install Microsoft Azure DevOps, and that link I will mention in the comment section. Okay, and when you get in, when you go to my Microsoft Azure DevOps video, in that you will get a deep dive and deep understanding on all these each step, from the project setting to creating a project, installing the Microsoft Azure DevOps in your laptop, and how you will start up with the capacity, agile and portfolio planning and the management. Okay, so on in all those areas you will start up, and when you need to include all the sub areas where you are creating your sprint, your epics, your features, your stories, your task, everything. So here there in Jira you have told the user stories, and here in Microsoft Azure you have set the product backlog items. That is nothing but your user stories. Very little differences are there. There you have seen the issues, here you have seen the number of tasks, the impediments will be there. So you need to work with the workflow item. You should know in Microsoft Azure DevOps what is your work item. So your work item is your epic, feature, a product backlog item, that is your user story, your task and your impediments. So based on that, management and the feature team will be there. So feature team, if you are having a website, so customer profile will be there, shopping cart will be there, email is there, service status will be there. In management you have the account management or service delivery will be there. So you will be working with the work item. In the same way, when you install Microsoft Azure DevOps, you will be set work item type, the feature, the title, the training dashboard, all the steps will be there and you need to follow on that. Okay, so the next step, when you are working with the work item, the next will be managing the sprint and the capacity. How you will do in Azure DevOps and the reporting and working tracking the chart. So your team builds the sprint backlog during the sprint planning meeting, typically held on the first day of the sprint. So each sprint corresponds to the time box interval which supports your team ability to work using the agile process and tool. Okay, so during this meeting, your product owner work with your team to identify the stories and the backlog, right? So what you will do, you will planning meeting typically consist of two parts. That first, team and product owner identify the product backlog item, and team feel it can commit the completing the sprint, and based on the experience with the previous sprint, those item will get added into the sprint. And the second part, the team determined how to develop this item and determine estimate tasks required each item, and finally your team commit, they're implementing some or other item based on this these estimates, right? So what you will do, you will navigate your sprint using these options, and from these option work details, you will create your workflow, the to do. You can add pace there, the capacity tab will be there. You can put how much capacity is required in your team member, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 development, and what requirement, how which module has given to the particular member. Two people are there for a particular backup, as I give an example of my own project, right? So we are a backup for one module, two people are there to address on that. So what is your capacity for a particular requirement or model, how many days has been located for a particular sprint, what is if there is any vacation plan of this span 5 of that week, right? So what are the vacation plan, that dashboard should be there, task board should be there, you should be tracked, and once you will create everything, you need to click on the save button, right? When the you will come on the burn down, the remaining work will be there based on the capacity, team number of days, the work will be tracked, completed, and the remaining work, your task code will be there, people will be there, the configure and team setting and access you have been provided, and what activity and development and backlog you are going to give that, and you will work on the tracking on the working with the bugs, what all the development process has been done and tracked and remaining, right? Once you will be tracking these, you need to save it in your Azure DevOps board, right? So in that you can do multiple configuration in the team setting. Yeah, when you explore on that, when you go to the configure team setting, you can tag color, you can add color, you can put any data, or you can add any tutorial. If anything is required to add, any doc is there, you can add and save it, right? So multiple options are there. If there is any changes can be done in WIP limit, you can actually change the color. If there is any warning is there, you can choose the red color. If there is done is there, you can choose the green color. If you need to add money additional column, right, here usually we have 3, but in live in your project, based on that, you can have multiple, you can have 10, you can have 11, you can have 8. So based on that, as per your project and your dev and QA will be approved, you can add column of work in doing and done, or split the column in testing and all phases of the test, whatever you are doing that in Microsoft Azure DevOps, and also in Jira actually you can do that. Okay, so in the next task in Azure DevOps, you need to define the dashboard, right? How you will define the dashboard, the overview of the dashboard. You have chosen a particular team, name will be there, you have added there, you add a wizard and you create a new dashboard. The product training or any training is required, you can add on there, a particular sprint you will add on, and what all work has been done, and you will go to the sprint capacity and edit the wizard, and you can save it based on the work item task, work shared queries will be there, web task will be there, you can add on accordingly. The next task in the Microsoft Azure DevOps, you will be customizing the team process. So in Azure DevOps, you customize your work tracking experience through the process, and a process define the building blocks of the work item tracking system, as well as the other subsystem you can access through Azure DevOps. So whenever you create a team project, you select the process which continues the building blocks you want for your project, and Azure DevOps support these processes type. The first one is to the core system of processes, Agile, Scrum, and CMMI system processes are logged. So you can choose any customization, whatever is required. And once you are created, once all the processes are shared, and the team is on a sequence and reference and following a single process, you can create an inherited process and customize it, and based on that migrate the existing team project and refer it. The Git team project can be customized, so all the code will be in repository, will code will be saved, and the project will be created. Okay, this we have created a new process that inherited from the Scrum. So in Agile, in Scrum project management, we will inherit from the Scrum, right? So in Azure DevOps, you will work on the processes, boards, Scrum, customization, Scrum, product backlog item, new fields will be there. You can change the layout and all, and you can customize overall Scrum. The work items you have to always remember. So bugs that describe that divergence between the required and actual behavior you need to track. Epics help the team effectiveness and manage and grooming their product backlog. You feature track the feature that will help to release with the product. Impediments track the obstacle to the progress. Product backlog item track an activity that user will be able to perform with the product. Task track work that need to be done. Test case server side data to set up the step to be tested, and test plan track the test activities for the specific milestone or release. So all the work item will be taken care in Microsoft Azure DevOps and Azure for boards. So this is all about your agile planning, portfolio management, and your Azure board work, Azure DevOps tool in the Scrum board, the Agile board, and the work items. I will always recommend please go through the website of scrum.org, read through this Scrum guide, get a thorough deep dive minimum of 3 times to the Scrum guide, and trust me, the more you will read, the more understanding and new thing you will get to know. And this is my own personal experience. When you read the first time, when you read the second time, when you read the third time, something new you will get to know, and that will make a grip on the subject, and that will be very helpful for your certification and any exam or interview to take up. So there will be a sample exam you will find in scrum.org. Please go through that, download the Scrum guide, Scrum groceries. Also, I'll recommend the Nexus Scrum guide or evidence-based management, which is useful for the product owner certification. You can download and you can practice on that, right? And there will be a certification exam, and it is well recognized certification exam, as I am aware of, which is having a value in the market, and you will get details on the scrum.org. You can definitely go through that. Okay, so if you are want to look on my full portfolio or on the online training program, you can definitely go to the swatijira.github.io, which you will get in the last, and you will get all the details on the entire program of the Scrum project management and the online training if anybody is interested. And I really hope that this video has provided you some insight which will be helpful for the preparation part. I'm also going to upload some videos on question answer session, and also on the agile and Scrum method and the techniques what we are going to use. And also the definitely you will get to know on the tool videos we are going to cover. So please like, subscribe, and click on the bell icon. Go to my YouTube channel where you'll get multiple videos. Many thanks for all the viewers who is looking into that. And if anybody is interested on online training or any kind of assistance, I'll be more than happy to assist you. You can write it to me at ishkarsran@gmail.com. You will get details in this second last slide, and you will get the entire details of my project. So thank you all. Thank you for watching this. Many thanks to all of you.